Hi guys, it's Kathy. I don't. Last stream I had a last stream that didn't start, and I had to go press start, and then this time I went to look. I don't get it. I don't understand. But hi guys. No. All right. I have something exciting to show you. We've just been rolling along and rolling along that we did something. We almost did something. We are this close to doing something really freaking cool. Let me show you. So, there are 498 videos. We're going to hit and get through most of 248 today. So today we will be officially halfway through. However, remember, we just started playing 1.25 speed. So the second half is going to go way faster than the first half. 25%, that's not right. Faster. So, yeah, we did it. We got through the vast majority. Sorry, that was the last case. I was trying to cleanse myself for the last case before we started, and there I threw it right back in there again, like an idiot. Now I'm going to press play. I don't hear anything either. Hold on.
You could
Now I do.
simply also make a list of all the possible genotypes that could be in there, and it would include the ones you've listed there, including the one for Mr. Simpson and the one for Nicole Brown.
In your column, where you have not excluded, you didn't make an assumption that there was simply 2 donors, did you?
No, we didn't make any assumption at all about how many donors there were.
Right. So likewise, if we don't make any assumption as to how many donors there are, in the categories of people not excluded, you would agree then with the 3 different groupings that I placed on defendants next in order, would you would agree then?
I believe it would be 1151.
1151?
1151.
Is that correct, sir? Ma'am? Doctor? Excuse me. It's a long weekend, I apologize.
Yeah, you're correct, but what I'm trying to get, the point I'm trying to get to is that if you don't make any assumptions at all about how many donors there are in there, there are genotypes that aren't on your list. You wouldn't exclude a 1111. You wouldn't exclude a 1.2, 1.2.
Well, I'm sorry, 1.1 is on the list.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, you're right. You're right. Okay, I guess we have all possible.
Wait!
Thank you, Josh. I was going to say
First
thank
of
you
all,
earlier,
you
but
can't
he's
talk
yelling.
at the same time. Secondly, when I say wait, everybody stops, including you, Dr. Cotton, including you, Mr. Neufeld. You can't argue with the witness and with the answer that she's giving. You get to ask questions, you get to give answers, Doctor. Proceed.
Thank you. Of course, Commissioner, Your Honor, I'd just like to be able to move the pad so the rest of the jurors can see it as well. Thank you. Now, in terms of eliminating other possible contributors to this mixed stain, Dr. Cotton, are you aware that neither Dennis Fong or
5.5.
Angela Zola could have contributed the number 4 allele
Oh, I can't stand when he's talking. 5.5 days she was on the stand.
to this mixture?
Objection assumes fact on that.
Sustained.
All right, let me ask you a hypothetical, based on a good faith basis. May I just show something
Your
to...
Honor,
May I produce a
may we approach the
document?
bench, please?
Yes, with the court reporter.
I feel like Judge Ito should not have interrupted Dr. Cotton. I don't care if he does it to everyone else, but I feel like he should have not done that to Dr. Cotton.
Dr. Cotton, the first samples that were sent to you by the Los Angeles Police Department were sent on or about June 22nd, 1994. Is that correct?
That's right.
And at least initially, the person that you were expected to contact with the results of your testing was Michelle Kessler at the LAPD. Is that correct?
She was one of the contacts, yes. There was another person who could also be a contact, if I remember correctly.
Let me just show you a document to see if it refreshes your recollection on this point. Let me ask you this question. Were you at least initially instructed by the Los Angeles Police Department that the results should be communicated to Michelle Kessler?
Yes.
And I believe on September 8, 1994, your laboratory prepared a report on DNA results, did it not?
We have a lot of reports. Which one?
One dated September 8th.
Yes, I found it.
Found it?
Yes,
Okay. And that's a report written to Michelle Kessler?
that's right.
And isn't it a fact that on September 12th of 1994, Cellmark actually faxed a copy of this report to Michelle Kessler at the Los Angeles Police Department?
We may have. I don't have all those records down here with me.
Perhaps I can help you. Sure. What's next on your honor?
152. Excuse me, 1152.
I'll show you a document which has been marked since 1152, which is a five-page report, excuse me, and ask you if you can identify that document.
Yes, Donald, that's what I mean. You're not good enough. That's exactly what that means.
Yes, this is a copy of the September 8th report, and although the fax cover is not here, and I can't exactly read all the...
CJ. I will never stop streaming at 4:30 a.m. unless I have to. This is in addition to. I will never stop our time together. Never.
figures at the top. It seems to say from Cellmark Diagnostics. I can't read any fax date on the top, however.
If you look at the next page of the page after, where it seems to be a little bit clearer.
Oh, yeah,
Can you
there
see
we
the
go.
date?
Right. And the date is September 12th, 1994 at 1:45.
Okay, and so that would indicate, Dr. Cotton, thank you, that this September 8th report was faxed to Michelle Kessler at Los Angeles Police Department on September 12th, 1994?
Yes.
Now, did Cellmark disclose the results in that report to anyone other than Michelle Kessler during the month of September?
No.
Well,
Did Cellmark disclose any of the results contained in that report of September 8th to anyone in the media?
Absolutely not.
Are you aware, Dr. Cotton, that there were certain media reports on September 12th concerning the results.
Objection seems facts not in evidence.
It's irrelevant.
Oh, she pushed her too far. Her brain broke.
I want to ask you some questions, Dr. Cotton, about the substrate controls in this case, all right?
Sure.
Now, in this case, Andrea Mazzola testified that she created substrate control swatches for every stain that she collected at Bundy and at Rockingham. Are you aware of that, by the way?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
No, I've watched little bits and pieces of testimony here and there, but I have not listened to the entirety. I didn't have time to do that, so yeah, I'm not.
Okay, thank you. You stated on direct examination, Dr. Cotton, that testing the substrate control swatch can be informative if the testing of that swatch reveals the presence of DNA. Is that correct?
Yes.
And would you agree that if DNA is found, one explanation could be that there was certain biological material in the area immediately adjacent to the bloodstain?
Yes, that would be the interpretation.
And would you agree that another explanation, Dr. Cotton, could be that both the bloodstain swatch and the substrate control swatch were cross-contaminated at some point after the collection of the evidence? That's another possible interpretation.
If you are testing the substrate control and you found DNA on it, then that would say that your first explanation would be correct, and the other explanation, which you just said, is that it could have been contaminated later, but it doesn't say anything about whether the actual piece of evidence was contaminated later. It only says something about that substrate control.
No, but as an expert in the field, Dr. Cotton, if you thought that there may have been a cross-contamination of that substrate control, and the substrate control was handled all the way along the process with the evidentiary stains, would that at least cause you to consider the possibility in your mind that the evidentiary stains may also have been cross-contaminated?
Objection irrelevant, also seems facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
It certainly would say, it would raise that possibility in your mind, but it wouldn't tell you definitely one way or the other.
Okay.
It wouldn't tell you anything.
Well, it would tell you that you should be concerned about that possibility. Is that correct?
Yes, but being concerned about it and knowing something aren't the same thing.
Well, I think you also said that you can't know for sure whether there was cross-contamination with a sample before you ever received it anyway. Isn't that right?
Of course.
Well, would you agree with the following proposition, Dr. Cotton? When a stain of blood is analyzed with PCR, it is important to analyze the unstained materials next to the stain with PCR as a control for contamination.
I think you can, I know you can do that. Sometimes, depending on the nature of the evidence, it may be more important to do that than other times. We do not, in our laboratory, routinely request a substrate control. If we're requested to do one, of course we do it, but we do not routinely request one, or if we're given a big stain, we don't routinely take one, because it's not always going to be informative depending on the nature of the evidence.
So what you're saying is that it's your policy to defer to the submitting agency as to whether or not the control swatches get analyzed.
That's what we would generally do.
Now, so just getting back to the proposition that I asked you about, Dr. Cotton, would you agree that it is important to analyze the control swatch at the same time for PCR testing as you analyze the evidentiary stain?
I don't think it makes any difference if you do it one way or the other.
But do you believe it's important to do it?
Objection made.
Overruled.
I'm not sure what you're asking me. Are you asking me, is it important to, at the same time that you do the DNA extraction from the evidence swatch, that you do the DNA extraction from the control swatch at the same time?
Did you say on direct examination, Dr. Cotton, that it's important when you have a certain kind of control, be it a negative control or a positive control, that the controls should be run in parallel to the actual evidentiary items?
Well, I said you should run a reagent blank control in parallel to the actual items.
And did you also say that you should run the amplification control in parallel to the items?
Yes, the negative reagent, the negative control that you set up at the time of amplification is always run in parallel.
And did you also say that you should run the positive control in parallel
Yes.
to the other items of evidence?
Yes.
And you said on direct examination that another type of control that exists is this substrate control. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
So my question, Dr. Cotton, is, would you agree with the following proposition, that when the blood stain is analyzed for PCR, it is important to analyze at the same time the unstained material which makes up the substrate control?
No, I don't think it's important. I think you can do it later, and it will still give you the same information as if you do it at the same time.
So what you're saying, and correct me if I'm misstating it, Dr. Cotton, that as long as you do it later, when you do it is not critical.
That's what I'm saying.
Now, In this case, Dr. Cotton, you received bloodstained items, swatches from items 47, 49, 50, and 52 last summer. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And is it also true that when the LAPD sent you those items representing stains from the Bundy walkway, they failed to send you substrate control swatches for the same items?
Objection argumentative.
Sustain. Rephrase the question.
When the Los Angeles Police Department sent you last summer the bloodstain swatches for items 47, 49, 50, and 52, did they send you the substrate control swatches for the same items?
No, they didn't.
And in October of 1994, you received the bloodstain swatches for item number 48, did you not?
You'll have to let me check my sheets first. Can you give me some kind of number that I'm looking for here, or a specific date?
October 12th. On or about October 12th. If you take a look in your report dated November 11th, 1994, you may see a reference.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay.
So is that correct, that on or about October 12th, you received two bloodstain swatches representing what was purported to represent item 48?
Yes, but I think that was the actual item 48. I got a lot of stuff here, so let me go back, okay?
Sure.
All right.
Is she extra testy because Judge Ito yelled at her? Oh no, this live streaming this is killing my numbers. It's fine though. I'm doing great in other places. I can't get to 250 videos and then just say, you know what, screw the rest. No, I just can't. I just won't. Plus, I want to see the defense's side. I want to see it so bad. I can taste it.
Created a misunderstanding and not have been as clear as I should have been in my question, and perhaps I can save some time. Isn't it true that on about October 12th, 1994, that you received two bloodstained swatches which were labeled item 48 from the Los Angeles Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. And in that same shipment, did they send you the control swatch, the substrate control swatch for item 48?
Yes.
And what record do you have of that, of receiving that control swatch on that date?
We have a login for item number 48 with a C after it.
Well, let me ask you this question. In the report that I just referred you to, which I referred you to, which referred to the October 12th date, didn't that say that you only received two swatches, both of which were stained?
Yes.
It doesn't refer to a unstained swatch being received in that shipment, does it?
It doesn't, but we have a statement in our... No, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I'm only finding the information about item 48 itself in this report with the types from item 48.
Which would be the stain, the blood-stained portion, correct?
That's right.
And
That's
so,
why I'm getting confused. I'm not finding what you're referring to, and I don't know if it's simply not here, or I'm not finding it.
well, there's no indication anywhere in your reports that you received the substrate control swatch for item 48 in that shipment on October 12th. Isn't that right?
That's right.
And since you did not receive from the Los Angeles Police Department the substrate control swatches for those 5 for the stains from the purported Bundy drops, would it be fair to say that you also did not run control swatches when you actually did the DNA testing on the evidence itself?
We didn't run any control swatches on that early set of evidence at the time that we analyzed that group of samples.
And would it be fair to say, Dr. Cotton, as an expert, that since the Los Angeles Police Department did not ship to you the substrate control swatches for the Bundy walkway stains at the same time as the evidentiary stains, that you have no knowledge regarding how these control swatches were handled since their purported collection to the present?
Thank you, Jude. $5.
That would-
Thank you.
That would be true. However, we did receive some control swatches later, and I'd have to look at
I like
which samples
incognito.
those were control swatches for to say I had no knowledge.
All right, well, let's start out with the first step.
Okay.
Assuming for a moment that you did receive some control swatches much more recently, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Certainly, based on the fact that you didn't receive the control swatches at this, along with the evidentiary stains last summer and in October, would you agree that you have no knowledge regarding how those control swatches were handled since their purported collection up until the time, much more recently, that you received any of those control swatches?
Yes, of course that would be the case.
And Dr. Cotton, in this case, there was also testimony that by Andrea Mazzola, that when she testified on August 23rd, 1994, that she had testified that she put her initials on bindles that she processed on the morning of June 14th. My question to you, Dr. Cotton, is, do your records reflect that any of the bindles that you received from the Los Angeles Police Department bore Mazzola's initials?
Objection argumented, first portion.
Sustain. Phrase question.
Do your records have Andrea Mazzola's initials on any of them? I'm sorry, do your records reflect that on the bindles that you received, whether Andrea Mazzola's initials appeared on any of those bindles?
They don't reflect whether they do or don't. That is, we wouldn't be writing that down. We would be writing down what was inside the bindle.
Did you look at the bindles yourself when they came in?
On the original pieces of evidence or the control swatches
The
later
original
on?
pieces of evidence?
We did look at them, and this is on the first group of stuff that we received. Yes, we did look at them.
And to the best of your recollection, isn't it a fact that Ms. Mazzola's initials were not on any of those bindles?
I don't have any specific recollection. It's not a piece of information that I would have been likely to remember.
Dumbass.
Now, Dr. Cotton, you said that you did receive some control swatches more recently, is that right?
Yes, we did.
And would that be in April, this just past April of 1995?
Yes, it would.
And isn't it a fact, Dr. Cotton, that would be, I'm sorry, and would that be the only time that you received any control swatches in this case?
I believe that those are the only control swatches that we received.
Okay. Would it be fair to say, Dr. Cotton, that from the very first time you received item 47 in this case until today, as you sit on this witness stand, that the Los Angeles Police Department never sent to you the substrate control swatch for item 47?
Yes, that would be correct.
And so item 47's control swatch has never been examined or tested by your laboratory?
That's right.
Would it be fair to say, Dr. Cotton, that from the time they first sent you item 48 in this case until today, as you sit on this witness stand, the Los Angeles Police Department never sent you the substrate control for item 48?
That's correct.
Dr. Cotton, apparently
He finally hit something. But he spent so much time asking stupid questions that I automatically assume he's stupid. So what he hit upon, I don't know if it's really important or not, because I just think he's stupid.
they did send you on April 4th material labeled item 49, but it doesn't say it was the item 49 control. Isn't that correct?
It didn't state on the label the word control.
It just said item 49, correct?
That's right.
All right. So do you have independent knowledge as to whether you received on April 4th the control for item 49, or did you just receive a portion of item 49?
I have photographs in the case folder of what that item looked like, but I don't have any on paper writing that says anything other than item 49.
Okay. So you have no document or record which reflects that you received the control for item 49 either in that batch. Is that correct?
That's what I just said.
Now I call your attention to item 50, the fourth of those stains at the Bundy location. from the date that you first received item number 50, the evidentiary stains, until today, as you sit here on this witness stand, have you ever received the substrate control swatch for item number 50?
No, we haven't.
Finally, for item number 52, Dr. Cotton, from the day you received the evidentiary portion of item 52 until today, as you sit here on this witness stand, has the Los Angeles Police Department ever sent to you the substrate control swatch for item 52 for DNA analysis?
No, they haven't sent it to us.
In your laboratory, Dr. Cotton, is there a standard procedure that every employee who removes or puts something into a bindle puts his or her initials on the bindle?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the practices in other laboratories, Dr. Cotton?
Not particularly.
Well, Dr. Cotton, to the extent that you have expertise in this area, would you agree that it is a standard procedure at every forensic science laboratory to have an individual who either removes or puts something into a bindle to initial that bindle?
I can really only speak for what we do in our laboratory, and when we take something in or out, the bindle is taped and initials are put across the tape and the adjacent paper.
Now, referring to another type of control, Dr. Cotton, you mentioned something called a reagent blank. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
And is the reagent blank sometimes referred to as an extraction blank also?
Yes.
And is that because this control starts at the beginning of the processing of the sample at the laboratory when you first extract the DNA from the sample?
That's exactly right.
And am I correct in saying, Dr. Cotton, that a reagent blank is simply a tube without any DNA in it that gets processed along with all the other evidentiary samples?
Yes, generally that's what it is, or it could, on rare occasions, contain, if you had to swab a stain off of something, if we had to do that in the lab, and that hadn't previously been done for us, we might include a piece of the swab before it was used. So it's not always absolutely empty, but most of the time it is.
And generally, at least in this case, that's what you meant by a reagent blank, one that was empty.
That's right.
One moment. Now, if at the end of all those steps that comprise the DNA typing procedure, Dr. Cotton, the reagent blank tests positive for the presence of DNA, it means the control failed. Is that correct?
You're putting a very black and white interpretation on there. It means that you have some DNA that was in there at some point, and that's not a term to say a control failed. That almost means to me that the control didn't provide you with the information that you need instead of did. So I wouldn't choose that term myself,
All right.
but
Well,
it does mean that you have some DNA in there that you normally would not expect to have in there.
Well, it's not just normally, Dr. Cotton. The way you run your experiment and the reason you have this reagent blank is, and the way it's run in this case, for instance, is because if the test is run correctly, there shouldn't be any DNA in the reagent blank at the end of all those steps when you analyze it. Isn't that correct?
That's exactly right, yes.
And in fact, if you do see the presence of DNA, it means that the experiment was not a success. Would you agree with that?
Well, again, it's the same thing. It's informative. It doesn't necessarily mean your results are wrong if you equate wrong with success or correctness with success. It doesn't mean your results are wrong. It does mean that you want to go back and possibly redo it, possibly, relook at what you did. You might only go back if you thought something had happened just at the very last part. You might want to just go back and do the very last part. It means you want to go back and look at what you've done carefully.
Well, Dr. Cotton, if in fact you see DNA profile in the reagent blank, which is supposed to have no DNA in it, could that also mean that evidentiary specimens that were processed at the same time as the reagent blank were contaminated with some form of DNA?
It could mean that.
In fact, isn't that one of the dangers when you see a DNA profile in what should be a negative control? Isn't that an indication of the possibility that contamination or cross-contamination occurred early on in the process?
It indicates that that could have happened, yes.
Is that right?
That's right.
And so the first step that you undertook when you received those two samples in June of 1994 was to extract the DNA from the 90% portion of those two samples. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And this extraction of items of DNA from items 49 and 50, this was done before Drs. Blake and Dr. Lee even visited your laboratory. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
Now, after the extraction process, Dr. Cotton, you took a small portion of the extracted DNA and you ran, I think, what you described as either a test gel or a yield gel to determine approximately how much DNA is present?
That's right.
And is that what you actually did with items 49 and 50?
Well, I didn't actually do it myself, but that's what was done with 49 and 50.
And as to both items 49 and 50, when that little mini gel test was run, you concluded that there was too little DNA present for RFLP testing. Is that correct?
And we concluded it was too degraded for RFLP testing.
Okay. Now, in some situations, Dr. Cotton, after you take that small portion of the 90% and do that test, would you be able to recycle the balance of the 90% to use for other forms of testing, such as PCR testing?
We would only do that if we had run a reagent blank control during that DNA extraction.
If you would run a reagent blank control that we just described during that part of the processing of items 49 and 50, then you would be able to recycle the balance of that 90% of unused DNA. Is that correct?
That's right.
But in this case, Dr. Cotton, your laboratory simply didn't run a reagent blank negative control for items 49 and 50. Is that correct?
Not at the time that we did that first extraction.
And so for items 49 and 50, at least as to the bulk of that 90% of the material that you received, it could not be recycled for PCR testing, could it?
Well, you could do it. You simply wouldn't have a reagent blank control to run along with it. So we did not use that initial extracted DNA when we did our PCR test on that sample.
Well, the reason you didn't use the balance of that 90% portion is because you could not know for sure whether or not there was some contamination that occurred with respect to items 49 and 50 without having a reagent blank. Isn't that right?
Yes, we couldn't know what had happened during that DNA extraction.
And so to be scientifically cautious, you didn't use that portion of 49 and 50, which you failed to use a reagent blank on, for follow-up PCR testing. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Does your laboratory keep a centralized log indicating the number of times that you failed to run a particular control?
No, we
She's
don't have any
super
kind of
annoyed.
log like that.
I feel bad
They're-
for her.
they're-
It is better
Never
than
mind.
being muted.
We don't have a log like that.
All right. Dr. Kahn, do you agree with the following proposition? If a negative control is positive in one experiment, it indicates a potential problem, not just for that experiment, but for any experiment performed by the laboratory at about the same time.
I agree that that might be the case, but in other words, it might indicate that there were problems with other experiments, or it might indicate there was a problem just with the one thing that you did, and you'd have to go back and look at other things to make that determination.
Well, that's
So
all
I guess I don't agree with that statement.
You don't agree with it?
Not completely, no.
Well, the statement simply says it indicates a potential problem, not a definitive problem.
Okay.
No,
I'll go
now
for
that it says that,
potential
you would agree with
problem.
that?
Wait.
Sorry. Let me repeat the proposition one more time, Dr. Cotton. If a blank control is positive in one experiment, it indicates a potential problem, not just for that experiment, but for any experiment performed at about the same time. Would you agree with that proposition?
I would agree with that statement as you read it, yes.
Okay. And Dr. Cotton, are you familiar with that portion of the National Academy of Science report, DNA Technology and Forensic Science, which
Did you hear that? Did you guys hear that? Is someone out there screaming in the hallway?
addresses the issue regarding the consequences of a control failure in PCR testing?
Objection, some facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
Well,
Also move to strike. Counsel's comment.
Overruled. Ask Dr. Cotton if she's familiar with that part of the report.
are you familiar with the portion of the NRC report entitled DNA Technology and Forensic Science, which addresses that same issue, the consequences of a control failure?
Can you just tell me what the title of that section is?
It's page 67 of the NRC report, if you'd like to take a look at it. It begins on 65 and runs through 67. particular, Dr. Cotton, could you take a look at one portion of that just to save time?
The statement that you just pointed out to me is the one that you just read to me.
Okay, and in fact, in your own copy of that book, do you have that same statement underlined?
Yes, I have many things highlighted in this book.
And is that statement that I just read to you, in fact, one of those statements?
Yes.
And is that a portion of the NRC report that you, in fact, relied upon in coming to an expert opinion as to the consequences of a control failure in PCR testing?
I've read this portion of the book. I'm having a little trouble with this concept of relied upon. I've read this portion of the book. I agree with some of it, and I don't agree with other parts. I happen to agree with that statement, but if you ask me, did I agree with and rely upon that whole section, I would have to say no.
But,
All right, she's indicated she agreed with the portion that you read. All right. Next question.
and when you read that paragraph, did you also read the very next sentence?
Not just this, not when I was looking at it just now.
Okay, please do.
I'm sorry, objection.
Oh, well.
We're back on 67, right?
Yes.
I don't really agree with this next statement, but our laboratory hasn't been in that position, so I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other.
Well, Dr. Cotton, would this be a portion of the NRC report, namely this next sentence, that you relied upon in reaching your own opinions as to what actions to take when there's a failure of a control in PCR testing?
No.
One moment.
Her kids are probably like, oh God, I know that face. This man's in trouble.
Now, with the court's permission, may I read the entire sentence that she said she agreed with?
We've been through this already.
I only, as I stated as a proposition, a portion of a sentence. She's now read the entire sentence and said that she agrees with it.
Ask her the question.
Thank you. Dr. Cotton, do you agree with the opinion of the scientists who authored the DNA Technology and Forensic Science book for the National Academy of Science, in which they say, quote,
Well, excuse me, objection, you're set. As Frank.
Sustained. Ask Frank.
may we have a sidebar, Your Honor?
Nope. Very simple hearsay issue. Counsel, proceed.
Dr. Cotton, a moment ago when you said you agreed with and relied on that sentence, were you referring to this sentence? And I quote,
Excuse me, objection, misstates the evidence.
Sustained.
may I be heard on this issue, Your Honor?
Very simple hearsay issue. Counsel, move on.
I would simply ask to make a record on that issue, Your Honor.
Nope. Move on. The objection is sustained. You can make any argument at the break. We'll break at 10:30.
In your laboratory, Dr. Cotton, whenever there has been an instance, I'm sorry, a moment. In your laboratory, Dr. Cotton, has there ever been an instance when in a similar period of time, several different technicians saw DNA results on the negative controls when nothing should be visualized?
Yes, we had that occur one time.
And whenever there has been an instance where more than one technician or scientist observes a failure in the negative controls,
Oh God, I'm so scared. I'm leaving. I'll be back in a few minutes. I don't know. Good luck. Hopefully nothing crashes. Best of luck, guys.
Do you document that phenomena in any laboratory-wide log?
The instance is documented in terms of a report that goes to the quality control assurance manager, and what was done to correct it also goes to her.
So there would
in
be-
terms of a brief statement of this is what happened, this is what we did.
So, even at Selmark, there have been occasions where the negative controls failed.
Yes, and I want to be very clear about what I'm saying. We had one instance in which the negative control that's set up at the time of amplification was giving us a signal, and we had to go back and figure out that negative control it turned out that it by itself was contaminated, but it could have been some other result. And anyway, we had to stop doing what we were doing, go back and figure that out, and then restart testing.
And would it be fair to say, Dr. Cotton, that for each and every time where you've had the negative control failure, you have been able to determine by your investigation exactly how the contamination occurred in every instance when it did occur?
Objection, misstates the evidence.
Sustained. Phrase the question.
Well, there have been more than one occasion where a negative control has failed. Is that correct?
No, what I'm trying to tell you is there was one instance where we saw that, and I'm calling it one instance because it was confined to a period of 1 or 2 days. And so it wasn't just one test. Let me be clear. It wasn't just one test. There were several tests done over that period of 2 days, but it was this period of a couple of days that we had this problem. And that is the only period of time that we have had that particular problem.
So with respect to having that particular problem where the negative control failed over a period of 1 or 2 days in multiple tests, were you able to determine the precise cause for that failure?
We were able to, an answer is really no. We didn't know the precise cause.
One moment. And Dr. Cotton, in your laboratory, when that phenomena occurred over a period of 1 or 2 days in multiple tests, seeing DNA in the negative controls where it shouldn't be, would you refer to that phenomena as an outbreak of contamination?
I didn't refer to it like that, no.
Would you say that that's a fair characterization of it?
No.
Have you ever heard that term before?
I've heard it in court before. I've not heard it in scientific discussions.
You just said a moment ago that you only heard it in court proceedings and not in scientific papers. Is that correct?
I said discussions. That is, discussions I've had, or I can only talk about discussions I've had with people in other laboratories or in my own laboratory. If we have an instance of contamination, we don't generally refer to it as an outbreak. It sounds like we're getting the measles or something. And it's just not a term that I've ever heard used in discussing this potential problem with other scientists.
Dr. Cotton, you said that you read the NRC report many times. Is that right?
Yes.
When you read the NRC report, did you see them describe it as an outbreak of contamination?
Objection, your relevant officers.
Orwell.
Well, they may well have. I don't know. I mean, I can't. If you look at all the stuff that I have to read, I cannot remember word for word what's in the NRC report, what's in our standard operating procedure, and so forth. So, if it's in there, fine.
Dr.
But-
Cotton, would you...
I'm sorry, can the witness
Wait.
finish your answer,
Sorry,
please?
I thought you had. I
But it
apologize.
doesn't change the fact that when we discuss this in our lab and when I've discussed it with other people, that is not the terminology that I have used or I have heard anyone else use in the setting as I characterized it.
Dr. Cotton, please go back and look at the very same page we just looked at a moment ago, page 67, and the very same paragraph, and the very next paragraph.
All right, objection. Relevance hearsay.
Orwell.
Yes.
Isn't it a fact that the NRC report states,
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
it's for a different purpose, Your Honor.
Sustained. Ask the question appropriately.
Isn't it a fact, Dr. Cotton, that the NRC report describes this phenomenon as...
Same objection, your honor.
Sustained. Dr. Cotton, you've
Yes, sir.
reviewed that
Paragraph.
paragraph.
Yes, I have.
All right. Then, does that refresh your recollection as to that terminology?
They use the term outbreaks of contamination in this paragraph.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you agree, Dr. Cotton, that it is important to discover the source of a outbreak of contamination so that the laboratory can be cleansed of it?
No, I don't agree that you must determine the source. Sometimes that's simply not possible.
All right,
You-
Mr. Neufeld, the court reporter tells me she's about to run out of paper, so we'll take our break at this point. Do you have one or two more wind-up?
No, I don't. We can take a break right now.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a recess for the morning session. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case. And we'll take a 15-minute recess. Good morning again, Dr. Cotton.
Good morning.
Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you. Good morning. All right. Dr. Cotton, when you referred to the phenomenon in your laboratory where there was multiple instances of negative control failure occurring, when did that happen? You know the date?
No, I don't know the date without, it was sometime in the last 2 years, but I don't know the
Can
exact
you be more
date.
specific even as to the month?
No.
Do you know how many cases were included in those control failures?
I think it was about somewhere like 4 or 6, something like that.
And for each of those 4 or 6 cases, how many samples were there tested where the negative controls failed?
I have absolutely no idea. It wouldn't have been necessarily all the samples in that case. It could have been like one sample that was done at that time, but how many, I don't have any idea.
Is there a centralized log which one could access to see how many samples had the negative controls fail in that period?
No.
Would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that it is important to find out the source of the contamination causing the negative controls to fail so that you can correct the cause and thus reduce the likelihood of reoccurrence?
It's nice if you can find out the source, but many times that's not possible, so I would not agree that it was essential or necessary.
Well, in this case, Dr. Cotton, isn't it true that a reagent blank that was supposed to be blank displayed DNA dots?
Do you want to rephrase that? This case, when you say this case, are we talking about the
Oh, I'm
contamination?
sorry. In this case, right here in this courtroom, involving Mr. Simpson, isn't it true that a reagent blank that was supposed to be blank displayed DNA dots?
Yes, there was one.
And I believe you said on direct examination that there can be 2 possible explanations for that occurrence. Do you recall that?
I do.
And I believe you said that one possible explanation is that there was a minute contamination during the original extraction, which was magnified when it was concentrated along with item 7. Do you recall saying something like that?
Yes, I do. That's a good restatement of what I said, or what I meant anyway.
Now, is it also possible that a second explanation would be that during the concentration procedure itself, the contamination occurred?
Yes,
So those would be the 2 possible explanations that you came up with.
that's right.
Now, would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that if one doesn't know which explanation is correct, that to be cautious, it is incumbent on the laboratory to assume that the contamination occurred during the initial extraction?
No. I mean, there's 2 possibilities. There's no way to distinguish between them, so I think it would be inappropriate to assume one or the other.
Okay, well, if there's no way that you can prove which one it is, then certainly the explanation that the contamination that led to the reagent blank failure occurred furthest back in time as a possible theory. Isn't that correct?
Well, certainly that's possible, yes.
All right. Now, there were other samples that were extracted during that extraction of when you set up the reagent blank. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's right.
And would you agree that the other items in this case that were extracted at the same time as the commencement of the reagent blank were items 78, 56, 52, 47, and 12?
I'd rather go into my notebooks.
Please do.
Okay. Okay, I have the beginning of the notes on that set of samples.
Okay. And is item 78 included in that list?
The reason I'm having trouble is that our numbers are different than the item 78 numbers, so what's in the information that I'm looking at are just our own numbers, and it doesn't say item 78, so we have to, let me just find the piece of paper and take it out that allows me to easily go back and forth
Please do.
between the two sets. Okay, yes, item 78 was in that group.
And is item 56 in that group?
Yes, it is.
Is item 52 in that group?
Yes, it is.
And item 52 is the one where you did RFLP analysis, correct?
That's right.
And is item 47 in that group?
Yes, it is.
And is item 12 in that group?
Yes.
And are there any other items
that's
in that
right.
group that I left out?
You'll have to give me a minute, and I'll let you know.
Okay.
No, that's it.
Dr. Cotton, given the presence of DNA on the reagent blank negative control happening when you ran that batch of items that you just enumerated, shouldn't you have gone back and repeated the extraction procedure for those 5 items in the case?
No.
Doesn't your protocol, Dr. Cotton, say that if the reagent blank fails, then all the samples must be re-extracted?
The reagent blank for the other samples, apart from our sample 06, which is item 7, when that reagent blank was originally typed, it typed with no DNA signal visible at all. Therefore, the sets of the samples apart from sample 7 that did not get put through the microcon could not have been even if we assume, if we just say for the sake of assumption that there was some minor level of contamination that got concentrated later by the microcon, it was not at a sufficiently high level to produce any product whatsoever, and therefore it couldn't have affected the types that we came up with on the set of samples apart from the one that went through the microcon.
Well, Dr. Cotton, isn't it true that a contaminant does not necessarily have to contaminate all samples in the same quantity?
Given that all these things are in solution and based on the solutions would be normally considered to be even distributions of molecules, I don't really think that that's an important consideration.
But isn't that true, Dr. Cotton, only if you can assume what the cause of the contamination in the reagent blank is?
No, I think that since the reagent blank contamination clearly didn't show up in that first set of samples, that it does not present any problem to that first set of samples.
Dr. Cotton, doesn't your protocol explicitly state that if the reagent blank fails, then the entire experiment for the samples that are run with it should be deemed inconclusive? Isn't that in your protocol?
I'd have to look at the protocol to see what it specifically states, but in the protocol we don't usually use the word experiment, so it'd be better to go back and look at what it specifically states. I believe that it states that if possible the sample should be run again.
And does it also state, to your recollection, that the data should be deemed inconclusive?
Yes, it states that, but I can't tell you right off the top of my head if it states that as an absolute or it should be that's a possibility that should be considered.
We'll just show you the following document, see if it refreshes your recollection on this particular point. Thank you. Doesn't your protocol say that that when this happens, the test will be considered inconclusive? When I say this, I mean when the reagent blank fails.
Yes.
It doesn't say it could possibly be considered inconclusive, does it? It doesn't qualify it that way.
Well, there is a sentence later on that refers to the PhDs using their discretion when, and I can't restate the sentence exactly, maybe you can find it there, but there is some discretion there on the part of the PhD. And this sample before, it was amplified before it went through the microcon, and that amplification was also later on typed. So the sample wasn't exactly done in duplicate, but the results were obtained twice.
Dr. Codden, in fact, two people reviewed this same reagent blank, and both people concluded that there were DNA dots present, correct?
There are two.
There was no dissenting opinion on that, was there?
No.
All right. And in fact, I believe you said a moment ago that you should try to do re-extractions of the samples, but I believe it's your position that's not essential. Is that correct?
Well, in this case, I don't know that, again, I'd have to go back into the notes. I can't tell you whether or not we had enough sample available to do a re-extraction.
Well, to the best of your knowledge, did you make any effort at attempting to re-extract those samples?
In order to answer your, well, I know that we didn't, but what I can't tell you without going back into the record is whether or not there was anything that was available to us to go back and re-extract.
Would you please take a look at your notes to see whether or not any effort was made by Cellmark to do a re-extraction on those samples that were typed at the same time that the reagent blank tested positive?
I'm sorry, I guess I didn't understand when you asked me the first time. I thought you were referring to just sample item number 7.
No, I'm asking you whether or not efforts were made to do a new extraction from items 78, 52, 56, 47, and 12 after you got a negative control failure on the reagent blank.
We didn't get a reagent blank control failure for those items because the reagent blank typed with those items prior to putting it through a microcon was not positive, and those items were not repeated.
Dr. Codden, didn't you say a few minutes ago that one possible explanation for the DNA dots appearing on the reagent blank could be that when the initial extraction occurred, before you even reprocessed it, that when the initial extraction occurred, that's when the contamination occurred? Didn't you say that, doctor?
Yes, I did, but the reagent blank dots don't show up. If they don't show up with a set of samples, they can't have influenced anything. If you can't see anything, it can't have affected the types.
Well, Dr. Codden, you would agree that somehow there was a contaminant that got into that reagent blank that created some DNA to be present. Isn't that right?
Objection, ask and answer.
Somehow a contaminant got in there that caused the reagent blank to be positive at the point for item 7 after the microcon concentration had happened.
And when you created the reagent blank, you created it at the same time as you extracted those other samples that I just described, namely 78, 52, 56, 47, and 12. Isn't that right?
It was started at the same time, yes, but the end result, the reagent blank that gave the end result with 2 faint dots on it had gone through an additional procedure that the other items handled apart from item 7 did not go through.
But finally, Dr. Codden, didn't you say that you can't rule out the possibility that the contamination of the reagent blank occurred prior to that additional step, that it occurred during the initial extraction?
That's right, but I can rule out the possibility that it affected the types.
Do you even know to this day what actually happened to precipitate that reagent blank from lighting up with DNA dots?
No, it would be impossible to determine that at the time you did the work or at this point.
Now, I ask you to turn your attention to item 78. The stain removed from the bottom of the boot on Mr. Goldman.
And do you want me to look at PCR information or RFLP?
I believe you have a report on December 5th that refers to both, but I may be mistaken. Let me ask this. By December 5th, you had completed both the RFLP testing and the PCR testing. Isn't that correct?
That's my recollection, yes.
And I believe it was your testimony on direct examination, Dr. Codden, that the banding patterns that you observed in item 78 could be consistent with a banding pattern of Nicole Brown Simpson. Is that right?
Yes.
But I believe you also said that with respect to the other band scene, it was simply inconclusive as to whether or not Mr. Goldman is included or excluded. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
Now, let's turn to the fingernail scrapings. You did not actually receive fingernail scrapings from the Los Angeles Police Department, did you?
No,
And you did not receive fingernail cuttings from the Los Angeles Police Department, did you?
that's correct.
What you received were solutions, if you will, from the Department of Justice DNA laboratory in Berkeley. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you do not know what portion of the scrapings were utilized to do the DNA typing, do you?
To do the DNA typing in our laboratory,
Yes.
or
You don't know from where in the fingernail scrapings a sample was taken for you to do DNA typing in your laboratory. Isn't that correct?
oh yes, that's correct.
And you do not know from where on the fingernail cuttings the samples were removed for you to do DNA typing in your laboratory.
Yes, that's correct.
And would it be fair to say that you do not know whether the samples or the portions of the samples that Greg Matheson utilized for EAP typing at the LAPD laboratory could have been different portions of those samples?
That's right, I don't know that.
And would you also agree that one second. With With permission, I'd like to show the witness a slide which is already in evidence, 1143 E. D. D.
Proceed.
Can you see that slide, Dr. Cotton?
May I step down and view it from down there?
Sure. Take
Does it matter?
your time.
No. Whatever you feel most comfortable with, Doctor. Mr. Neufeld.
Are you aware, Dr. Cotton, that in this particular case, an EAP test was done by Gregory Matheson, which provided a result that was different than the EAP profile for Nicole Brown Simpson?
I'm aware that you did a test, and I'm aware there was some difference.
Okay. And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that when you are doing an EAP test, you are looking at what is known as a red blood cell protein?
Yes.
And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that red blood cells do not have DNA in them?
Yes, that's correct.
And just to go back for a second, Dr. Cotton, to clarify for me, in blood cells there are two types of cells, correct?
Well, there are really many kinds of cells.
All right.
If you want to get real fine differentiations, but if you want to classify them as red cells and white cells, for our purposes, that's going to work fine.
Okay. And Dr. Cotton, it's only the white cells that have the DNA, is that right?
Yes,
And the red cells for which you do an EAP test on do not have DNA.
that's right.
Thank you. You can have your seat again, please. I believe one of the statements you made on direct examination, Dr. Cotton, was the more genetic markers you look at, the more information you have. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that that would apply to conventional serological markers as well as to DNA genetic markers?
I would think so.
For instance, Dr. Cotton, would you agree that you could include somebody with a PCR DQ alpha type and then, for instance, do an ABO test, which excludes a person?
Yes, you could do that. I don't know enough about ABO testing to know the intricacies of what exact kinds of results you get, but could you exclude, could that phenomenon happen? Certainly.
And when you're looking at an ABO test, you're not looking at that person's ABO typing on a DNA level. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that likewise, the fingernail scrapings could appear to be consistent with Nicole Brown Simpson for certain DNA markers, but she could be excluded based on a red cell protein marker? But that's possible.
It's possible, yes.
Let me ask you one other question about these fingernail scrapings, Dr. Cotton. You had said on direct examination that sometimes the scientists in your laboratory are asked to examine a lane on the electrophoretic plate without being influenced by the bands they see on the lane to the left or the bands they see on the lane to the right. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, I did.
And you mentioned that, I believe you said, well, one of the things you want to avoid sometimes is a term called examiner bias.
I didn't say that.
Have you ever heard the expression examiner bias?
Yes.
And not just in forensic context, but have you heard that term used in conjunction with people who are asked to score autorads?
Again, it's something that I've been asked about sometimes in court. It's not something we normally are discussing in the lab, but I don't have anything more to say about it than that.
Okay. Well, would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that one way to avoid examiner bias on a particular lane that you're asked to score is to do what you said earlier on direct examination, namely cover up the information on the adjacent lanes and just look at the lane under question?
From what we do in the lab with autoradiographs, we do that sometimes because sometimes it's helpful in determining whether a band is sufficiently dark to score it.
Okay. Now, I want to show you an item which is People's 224B in evidence, which Mr. Matheson was asked to score using that same method, namely where you cover up the adjacent lanes and interpret it. I'm going to ask you to take a look at that same lane, Dr. Cotton.
Mr. Neufeld, can I offer you some Post-its?
Now,
No objections to foundation.
To ask a few foundational questions. Mr. Neufeld?
Dr. Cotton, have there been times when you have been asked to look at electrophoretic plates or photographs of electrophoretic plates to determine when a certain band may be controversial as to its existence or non-existence, to make a call on that by covering up the adjacent lanes?
Objection vague as to electrophoretic and also beyond the scalp.
Which test are we talking about here?
I'm going to show her it's the EAP, Your Honor.
Sustain, on scope.
Separate and apart, Dr. Cotton, for a particular type of test, would you agree, however, that it is a recognized procedure when you have a difficult-to-interpret lane to cover up the adjacent lanes and score it blindly?
Well, again, I can only speak for what we do in our lab, and what we do in our lab only pertains to DNA testing. So in our lab, that's a procedure that we use. I can't really speak to anything else.
Well, but Dr. Cotton, even in the field of medical research on DNA testing, isn't that a procedure that is also sometimes used in that application?
Well, again, I can only tell you what I've done. I didn't do that when I was running RFLP gels when I was doing research. I just didn't. We do it in our lab for the purpose that I described of trying to determine whether we can all see a particular band, and that's the extent of my use of that procedure.
And would it be fair to say that you at least regard it as an appropriate scientific procedure for the use in your laboratory?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, I'd like to ask you some questions about proficiency testing. Okay? You had referred on direct examination to the fact that Cellmark undergoes proficiency testing. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And you referred to different types of proficiency testing that Cellmark has undergone. Is that correct?
That's right.
And isn't it true, Dr. Cotton, that the Cellmark Laboratory makes available a summary of your laboratory's error rate as measured by proficiency testing?
Objection made.
Hold on.
We make available a summary of the lists of the number of tests, the number of samples that were involved, and if you were to calculate error rate using a specific formula, that calculation is also on that summary sheet.
I'm not asking you about what the error rate is or
I
specific
understand.
numbers at this time, Dr. Cotton. All I'm saying is, don't you, in fact, on that summary that you send out, actually refer to it as an error rate?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that one of the purposes of proficiency testing is to provide a measure of error rate, just as you did in the summary that you handed out?
You can do that with the results. In my mind, that's not the main purpose, but it's certainly a calculation that one can do.
I'm not asking whether it's the main purpose, Dr. Cotton. I'm asking if that's one of the purposes.
Yes, it is.
And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that there are different types of proficiency testing?
Oh, yes. I agree.
Next order is 1153, Your Honor.
All right, that's 1153.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Cotton, would you agree that one type of proficiency test is known as open proficiency tests?
Yes.
Okay? I'm going to call this chart proficiency test, if that's all right with you, because I'm going to be describing proficiency tests. Is that okay?
It's okay with me.
Okay. Now, one type you said is an open proficiency test, is that right?
Yes.
And another type of proficiency test is called a blind proficiency test, is that right?
Yes.
And the difference between an open test and a blind test, Dr. Cotton, is that in a blind test, the laboratory is unaware that it's being tested, isn't that correct?
That's right.
And in an open test, you're aware that it's a test, as opposed to actual casework.
That's right.
And furthermore, Dr. Cotton, there's another way to break down proficiency tests, isn't there? Well, let me ask you this way. Other than simply dividing those tests which are open from those tests which are blind, can you also separate those tests which are internal from those tests which are external?
Yes.
And in an internal proficiency test, the proficiency test is actually created by the laboratory itself. It's going to be tested.
That's right.
And on an external proficiency test, some outside agency is going to create this proficiency test and give it to the laboratory, such as Cellmark, to be tested.
That's right.
And so you would agree that there are basically 4 types of proficiency tests, based on what we've just discussed. Is that a fair statement?
Sure.
And one type then would be called an open external test. Is that right?
Yes, maybe I should come down and watch you draw.
Okay. And a second type of proficiency test will be called an open internal test, namely a test where the laboratory knows it's being tested and the test was made inside the laboratory. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And based on what you just testified to as to the 4 different categories of proficiency testing, the third category would be called a blind external test, correct?
Yes.
And a fourth category would be a blind internal test. Is that correct?
Yes.
Check out proficiency.
It's been brought to my attention by my colleagues that Ms. New York.
He shouldn't be allowed to do that. He shouldn't be allowed to ask her questions and then not even listen to the answer in the slightest bit before he moves on and asks the same question again wrongly. Whew, it was a rough drive, guys. I had to listen to this guy. All right. Hi, Timothy.
Lawyer also has a spelling problem, and there should be an I in here. Is that correct, Dr. Cotton?
Yeah, I have a spelling problem too, though, so.
It's an East Coast phenomenon. Thank you, Dr. Cotton. So, would you agree that these are the 4 categories of proficiency tests?
Yeah, you can break them down, and that's a
All right,
way to do that.
great. Could you just help me? Why don't you do it? Thank you. So the other 3 is here.
All right, Mr. Neufeld, proceed.
Yeah, well, I'd like to put it over on the side, if I may, Your Honor, because I'm going to be referring to it during the next portion of the questioning.
Proceed.
Now, Dr. Cotton, when you prepare tests yourself, when I say you, I don't mean you personally, Dr. Cotton, I mean Cellmark, the Cellmark Laboratory, you're of course familiar with the strengths and weaknesses in your own laboratory, aren't you?
I hope so.
Now, but when an external agency prepares a test, they're preparing a test that's going to go out to a number of different laboratories generally, isn't that correct?
That's right.
And the external agency is not simply thinking to itself, well, what are Cellmark's strengths and weaknesses? That's not how it works, is it?
I hope not.
Okay. And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that a proficiency test that mirrors actual casework would be a good basis for measuring laboratory error rate, as opposed to a proficiency test that doesn't replicate actual casework?
What do you mean by replicating actual casework?
Well, for instance, if you were interested in how well the laboratory analyzed forensic samples, you wouldn't rely on a proficiency test where you received simply, a statement saying that we're giving you 4 pristine pieces of white cloth, which we simply dabbed a single blood drop on, and we want you to type that. Would you agree with that?
Hold
Well, that's pretty much like a forensic case sample. You have standards that are on a cloth that way. So if you're talking about are they about the same number of samples and the same types of samples, then the proficiency tests seem to be sort of about the same numbers you would receive in an average case, and about the same type. I think they try to make the same types of samples that you would receive in a case. But clearly they're making the samples. They're not like picking them up from an actual crime scene.
Well, for instance, Dr. Cotton, in this case, there are several samples which are purported to be mixed stains, or stains from more than one source. Is that right?
Yes,
And that's something that's not uncommon in casework, right?
that's correct.
And so if you wanted to have a proficiency test where you try to replicate actual casework conditions, it would be a good thing to have some mixed stains thrown in, wouldn't it?
Sure.
And in this case, for instance, Dr. Cotton, there are samples which are purported to be scraped up off the sidewalk. Are you aware of that?
Scraped up off the sidewalk?
I'm sorry, swatched up off the sidewalk.
Yes, I'm aware
And
of
that there are
that.
samples that are swatched up off of a driveway.
Yes.
And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that samples that are collected from those types of locations are frequently affected by various environmental insults?
Of course.
So factors such as heat, sunlight, moisture, or the substrate condition itself can affect the quality of the testing. Isn't that right?
Sure.
And so if you wanted to have a proficiency test that replicated casework, you would like to supply the laboratory that's being tested with some samples that also have been subjected to various environmental insults, wouldn't you?
Well, you might like to, but I think for the numbers of samples that the proficiency test folks prepare, that's probably not very practical.
But if you wanted to replicate the kinds of environmental conditions you'd see in actual casework, that is something that would be desirable, would it not?
I don't think it's necessary.
See?
I'm not even sure that it's desirable because
He asks her a question, she answers it, he completely ignores her. He just completely ignores her answer.
it would be, what they would be trying to do then would be make, say, 100 sample sets, all of which were identical because they want to send every lab an identical sample set, and they would be doing it in a way that would lead to those things not being identical. And part of the goal of the proficiency test is to be able to compare one laboratory to the next. So it's really critical in the design of the test that all labs get equivalent samples.
Well, although it may be difficult, Dr. Cotton, would you agree that an outside laboratory, somebody creating a proficiency test, could consistently subject the samples that are going to be submitted to some types of environmental insults? Not necessarily all, but some types.
It may be possible for them to do that, but my understanding of how the proficiency tests are put together is that A, that's not the case, and B, in all the guidelines for proficiency tests to be made, that I don't think that requirement to make them that much like case samples is in the guidelines.
Well, Dr. Cotton, do you believe that it's possible, for instance, that when you're creating a proficiency test that's going to go out to many laboratories, that you could take those blood swatches on cotton, for instance, and put them in a room which has a uniform temperature, so they're all subjected to heat? Could that be done?
Sure.
And I think you said during your direct testimony that heat is one of the environmental insults which can actually cause the DNA to degrade.
Yes, I mean, given you're taking them into a room, you could subject them to however high you can crank the thermostat up, I guess, but you could make them all uniform with a particular temperature in a room.
And you could also make them uniform with respect to a certain humidity in that room as well, if you could control the amount of humidity in the room, couldn't you?
I suppose you could design a room to do that, but I don't know. Our air conditioning doesn't control the humidity too well, so I think you'd have to have a special design. You'd have to have a special piece of equipment to
And
do
Dr.
that.
Cotton, I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Dumbass.
You'd have to have a special piece of equipment that is sort of like a cold room. A cold room is just like a huge refrigerator.
And Dr. Cotton, there's a certain kind of light that can also affect the degradation of DNA.
Yes,
What kind of light is that?
ultraviolet light.
And could you also then subject the various control specimens that you're going to send out for DNA testing to ultraviolet light at the same time? That's something that could be done, couldn't it?
You could, but again, I think you'd have to have you'd have to design a special piece of equipment or a special room in which to do that kind of thing.
And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that, well, I'm sorry. When you receive casework samples, you do not know the answer.
She's falling into his trap. Like, she's walking dead straight into it. Like, well, when there's degradation, there's the sample is the DNA is either there or not there. It's either a large enough sample or it's not. So whether it's already been hit by sun, whether it's 100 degrees outside, whether it was raining, whether someone sneezed on it, it's either there or it's not there. And it was there. So nothing degraded these samples enough to change the DNA to anything else or to add them there when they weren't there. They were there. That's what the test showed. So all this other stuff that he is talking about doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the DNA is not as strong as it is while it was in Nicole's body. All right? It was on the pavement. They got a sample of it. The DNA was there. Yes, the sun came out. Yes, the temperature was, high or low or blah, 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 blah. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's not the exact same as it was while she was alive. There was enough there to show that it was her. And so, well, I guess the body showed it was her, but you know what I mean? None of this matters. None of this changes the fact that the DNA was the DNA. It just means that they would be, a smaller sample instead of a larger sample. Maybe if it was a complete stranger, I don't think so, because the DNA is the DNA. It matched her. It would, if it was a complete stranger, then that's what the DNA would show. It would show a complete stranger. It wouldn't change it. The sunlight wouldn't change it.
In advance, do you?
No.
The casework samples that come to Cellmark come from some kind of an external agency, such as the Los Angeles Police Department. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Do you agree that external proficiency tests, where you don't know you're being tested on samples, are the most realistic kind of proficiency tests to measure laboratory error rate?
I think both tests serve equally well to do that.
Well, I'm asking you about which is more realistic. You agree a moment ago, Dr. Cotton, that it's certainly more realistic when a laboratory doesn't know it's being tested than when it knows it's being tested. Would you agree with that?
Call roll.
It's much more, I mean, on a case, you don't know that you don't know the answer. If you receive a proficiency test that looks like a case, then of course that's a lot more like a case than a proficiency test that you know it's a test.
Okay. And, and similarly, Dr. Cotton, in an actual case, you said a moment ago, the samples don't come from within Cellmark, they come from an external agency. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
So likewise, Dr. Cotton, in a proficiency test where the samples are coming from an external agency, that too would be a more realistic kind of proficiency test to measure laboratory error rate than one in which the samples come from within the laboratory.
It is a more realistic type of test when compared to a regular case, but I don't think that it's any better or any worse for looking at laboratory errors than an open proficiency test.
Dr. Cotton, are you familiar with that portion of the National Academy of Science report, DNA Technology and Forensic Science, entitled Laboratory Error Rates?
I've certainly read it. I haven't read it recently.
Would you please take a look at pages 88 to 89?
Yes.
Call roll. She can look at it.
Tell him you don't know how to read. Make him prove you do.
And while she's doing that, let me see counsel without the report, please.
Oh, please yell at him. Please, 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 please sanction him. Please yell at him. Cameraman, move over. Move over, move over. I don't want to see her reading. I want to see him get in trouble. Sir, you're missing the best part of the trial. Fine. Fine.
Have you finished?
Yeah, I am.
Dr. Cotton, you've given an opinion about the usability of different types of, or the usefulness, excuse me, of different types of proficiency tests. Have you considered, in reaching your own opinions on this subject, the National Academy of Science recommendations with respect to measuring laboratory error rate through proficiency testing?
No, I haven't.
You've never considered that at all?
I don't agree with their recommendations.
Well, I'm not asking you whether you agree with the National Academy of Science's recommendations, Dr. Cotton. What I'm asking you is whether or not these recommendations have been considered by you seriously before you arrived at your own opinions.
Yes, because that's how I live my life. I take opinions I don't agree with, and then I try to force myself to use them every day.
I read them, I thought about them, and I have a different opinion than they do about whether or not what they're asking for is realistic and possible.
In reaching your own opinions on the subject of the utility of external blind proficiency testing, have you thus at least relied in part on what's contained in the NRC report, albeit you have disagreed or rejected, if you will, their recommendations?
Unintelligible.
Call roll.
Well, because I don't agree with it, I would say I haven't relied on it. I haven't used this in directing our laboratory to do the types of proficiency testing that we do.
Let me try and understand what you're saying, Dr. Cotton. Are you saying that it's your position that you only rely on those portions of the NRC report that you agree with?
I don't know how to say it more clearly. There are portions of this report that I agree with. There are a substantial number of portions of the report that I do not agree with, that I think either are not well considered or are simply wrong.
So is it fair for me to say, Dr. Cotton, that you have only relied on those portions of the NAS report in arriving at your own opinions that you personally agree with?
Objection assumes facts, not evidence.
Call roll.
No, she doesn't rely on that report. She doesn't rely on that report. Just say that, lady. Come on.
Actually, mistakes.
Call roll.
At the point that this report came out, I already had a substantial amount of experience at Cellmark, and I had a much larger amount of experience working with DNA in general. I do not need this report to make my opinions.
I'm sorry, Dr. Cotton, but again, my question is it your position that you've only relied then for your own opinions on those portions of the NRC report that you agree with?
It's, what I'm saying is I haven't relied on the report. If it happens that I agree with some things and disagree with some things, those things did not necessarily, or have not necessarily, played a role in my opinions about DNA typing and how it should be conducted.
Is it your professional and personal approach to the NRC report that if you don't agree with some of their recommendations, that you will not even take them into consideration in reaching your own conclusions?
Objection argumentative.
Sustained. Let's move on.
Well, do you think, Dr. Codden, that it is appropriate for scientists to give consideration to the opinions of other scientists with whom you disagree?
Overruled.
What do you mean, you can certainly think about them. I mean, the whole point, if somebody says, I don't agree with you, is to think about it and formulate what your opinion is and see if it's the same or different, and think about what somebody said. But if you have thought about it and you don't agree with it, then that's the situation.
And as to these various portions of the NRC report that you disagree with, have you given serious thought to what the author's recommendations are and why they've articulated them?
Objection asked and answered.
We've asked this question now 3 times.
Dr. Cotton, are you familiar with any scientific literature concerning the use of external blind proficiency tests on laboratories doing PCR testing in clinical medicine?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
No, I'm not.
Well, in your opinion as an expert, Dr. Cotton, do you believe it would be important for someone in your laboratory to keep track of the rate of false positives for PCR testing in clinical medicine?
I don't actually have a really good answer for that. I'm not familiar with procedures in clinical medicine. We are familiar with procedures in forensic science. They very well may be different. Whether or not our quality assurance manager is familiar with clinical procedures, I can't tell you. I just don't know.
And some people, Dr. Cotton, say that a DNA test can only give you the right result or no result.
Oh, excuse me, objection hearsay. Assumes facts not in evidence.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
Have you ever heard that expression, Dr. Cotton, that a DNA test can only give you the right result or the wrong result? I'm sorry, can either give you the right result or no result? Have you ever heard that expression?
I don't know.
Well,
I mean, I'm hearing it now. I hear you saying it. Whether or not I've ever heard it before, I don't remember.
well, now that you've heard it, Dr. Cotton, would you agree that that's not a correct statement?
Well, objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
Would a DNA test either give you the right result or no result?
Right.
That's much too black and white of a statement.
And one of the reasons that it's much too black and white a statement, Dr. Cotton, is I believe, as you've already testified, a DNA test could give you a false positive.
It's possible that it could. It could also give you an inconclusive, could also give you a false negative. Just a lot of in between there.
And if the DNA test gives you a false positive, it means that you're getting a match between 2 samples that in fact come from different people. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that if one laboratory made many errors in external blind proficiency testing and another laboratory made few, that the laboratory which made many more is more likely to make a mistake in a given case?
Objection irrelevant. Assumes facts not in evidence. Beyond the scope.
Overruled.
Given
you
the
mean
generalization
overruled?
that you just stated, yes, I guess I would agree with that.
And do you agree, Dr. Cotton, that interpretation of DNA typing results depends not only on the frequency of a DNA pattern, but on laboratory error rates as well?
No, I don't.
Well, do you agree, Dr. Cotton, that the strength of a DNA evidence depends not only on the frequency of the pattern, but on laboratory error rates as well?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
No, I don't.
Well, Dr. Cotton, did you read that portion of the National Academy of Science report which discusses the role of laboratory error rates in assessing the weight of DNA evidence?
That's part of the couple pages you just pointed out to me, is it not?
Yes.
Yes, I read it.
And have you thought about those couple of pages prior to today as well?
Yes.
And have you considered seriously the points that the authors of the NRC report are making with regard to the importance of assessing a laboratory's error rate?
Objection, Your Honor. This has been asked and answered.
Overruled. It's a different question.
Yes, I thought about it.
But you simply disagree with the National Academy of Science recommendations on this particular point, is that right?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, manager.
Dr. Cotton, once again, are you saying that the reason you don't rely on this portion of the report is simply because you disagree with it?
No, I'm not.
Asked and answered, also irrelevant.
Sustained.
Well, would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that the measure of a laboratory's error rate is a separate and independent issue from the measurement of the frequency of a DNA profile?
Of course.
I'm sorry, I'll withdraw.
So I couldn't get your answer. Could you
She said,
repeat?
of course.
Of course it is.
Well, do you agree with that portion of the NRC report which explicitly states that,
Excuse me, Your Honor, objection.
Sustained.
I'm not going to quote the portion.
Still hearsay, counsel. I think,
Do,
let's move on.
Dr. Cotton, do you agree with the sentiments of the NRC report
Sustained.
on that issue?
Irrelevant.
Wait, sustained. Move on.
Well, would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that if someone was falsely implicated by an RFLP DNA test, it would much more likely be due to sample handling error or cross-contamination rather than due to a coincidental match between people with the same RFLP profile?
Yes, sure.
Now, your laboratory has had at least a couple of instances where you had false matches due to sample handling error and cross-contamination. Isn't that correct?
Yes, two.
The objection compound.
Overruled.
Two.
And using the definition of the 4 types of proficiency tests that I've given you in that diagram, whose number escapes me.
1153.
Thank you. On 1153, in 1993, how many of your proficiency tests fall into the category of external blind proficiency tests?
In 1993, we have very few in external because it's a complicated answer.
Well, do you prepare a chart where you list the proficiency tests that you run in a given year? Do you have a chart like that?
Yes, we do.
And on that chart, do you actually identify which of the proficiency tests are internal versus which ones are external?
Yes, we do.
And on that chart, do you also differentiate between those that are blind and those that are open?
Yes.
And would you agree, by the way, Dr. Cotton, that at least for forensic cases, there's a difference between doing a proficiency test on a paternity sample with a mother and a child and a purported father than there is in forensic casework proficiency testing?
Oh, sure, but we have to do paternity proficiency tests also.
Okay. So my question is, Dr. Cotton, if you look at your memo, will you be able to tell us in 1993 how many blind external proficiency tests you did of a forensic nature?
Sure.
Okay.
There
And
aren't any.
I'm sorry, what?
I can tell you right now, blind external, there aren't any.
Okay. And in 1992, Dr. Cotton, how many blind external proficiency tests utilizing forensic type samples did Cellmark participate in?
None. We have never done a blind external, received from an external agency, proficiency test because there is no external agency which provides those kinds of tests, so there is no way to get one.
So, Dr. Cotton, is it fair to say that in the entire 6 years that your laboratory has been doing proficiency testing, there is not a single instance when you have ever been subjected to a blind external proficiency test?
That's exactly right.
Would you agree then, Dr. Cotton, that in the absence of being submitted to any blind external proficiency tests, that you really have no scientific basis for estimating your laboratory's error rate?
No, I don't agree with that.
Are you aware, Dr. Cotton, that the DNA laboratories that type bloods for bone marrow transplant registry routinely are subjected to blind external proficiency tests,
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
subject to connection?
Overruled. Are you aware of that practice, Doctor?
No, I'm not.
So would it be fair to say, Dr. Cotton, that the only types of tests that you have available for estimating your error rate, as far as proficiency test goes, are either those tests where you were testing yourself or those tests where you knew you were being tested? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Dr. Cotton, can you cite a single article in the field of laboratory quality assurance which permits a laboratory to assess its own error rate based on open and internal tests?
No, I can't.
Now, Dr. Cotton, I'm about to move on to something new, Your Honor. I don't know if you want to break now.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the morning session. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you. Do not conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. We'll stand in recess until 1 o'clock. All right, Dr. Cotton, you can step in. Let the record reflect we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury.
She needed a break. She just did. So, it was good timing.
Panel, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And Mr. Neufeld, you may continue.
No. Mr. Neufeld, you may continue with something else. Like you just promised. You were moving on to something else.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Dr. Cotton.
Good afternoon, Mr. Neufeld.
Now, Dr. Cotton, putting aside the absence of external blind proficiency tests at Cellmark, would it be fair to say that you have participated in a number of open proficiency tests since 1988?
Yes, we have.
And
Liar. You big, fat liar.
would it be fair to say that in these open proficiency tests that you've participated in, you routinely would receive a few samples to examine, or certainly no more than a handful of samples?
Yes.
Handful of samples.
That you would receive no more than, let's say, 5 samples in any proficiency test?
Yeah, I would say usually it's 3 or 4 per test.
Now, in this case, however, this case meaning People versus Mr. Simpson, you have received how many different samples from the Los Angeles Police Department to do DNA typing on? If you need to look at your records to calculate that number, please do.
$23.
Excuse me?
23?
Okay.
Well, that's how far, starting at 01, for our sample numbers, we went up to 23.
Fine. Now, unlike those various open tests that you just referred to a moment ago, where ordinarily you would have 3 or 4 samples given to you to examine, were there 2 proficiency tests that you were participating in 1988 and 1989 where you received 50 samples in each?
One was 49 and the other was 50.
Okay. And those tests in 1988 and 1999 were sponsored by the California Association of Crime Laboratory Directors?
Yes, they were.
The objection, I think. Question to state the other.
Oh, well.
If I said 99 when I meant 1989, I apologize.
I understood what you meant.
Now, let's take a look first at the proficiency tests run by the California Association of Crime Laboratory Directors that you participated in the year 1988. First of all, in that proficiency test, did you have any incorrect exclusions?
No, we didn't.
Now, in that particular test, Dr. Cotton, you were given these different samples, and you were asked to type them and determine which, if any, matched any of the other samples. Is that correct, in the same batch?
That's right.
And at a subsequent point in time, were you provided with a legend produced by the California Association of Crime Lab Directors telling you which samples, in fact, matched which other samples?
Yes.
And when you were provided with that legend, Dr. Cotton, didn't they tell you that items 70, 72, and 76 should all match one another?
That may be right. I don't have my copies with me. I do actually have them in the building, but I don't have them down here with me, so I might need to look at yours.
Fine. Next in order,
1154.
which is a
1154.
6-page report from the California Association of Crime Laboratory Directors. I show you this exhibit, this 6-page document from the California Association of Crime Lab Directors, and ask you if it refreshes your recollection as to whether or not items 70, 72, and 76 all come from the same source.
Yes, it does.
Okay? And now that it refreshes your recollection, is it in fact true that the way this test was set up, that samples 70, 72, and 76 all originated from the same person?
Yes.
And when you did the DNA typing, you meaning Selmark, not you personally necessarily, did the DNA typing on those 3 samples, didn't you conclude that although samples 70 and 72 matched one another, that sample 76 had a distinct pattern and did not match either 70 or 72?
That pretty much fits with my recollection, but if I'm remembering this group of 3 correctly, one of them is a mixture. You know, I don't have all my documentation of what we reported with me, so...
Well, Dr. Codden, isn't it a fact, and by the way, here, if you'd like to refresh your recollection, here is Selmark's report to the California Association. I would ask this to be marked next in line, next in order,
1155.
which is a 3-page document.
Dr. Cotton, I would like you to look at this next torture device. Exhibit.
Okay, you want to ask me your question again now?
Certainly. But you need to look at it when we answer it.
It-
I'll give it right back to you.
For a series of these questions regarding this test, if I
Sure.
could have a copy of both the CACLD table and my report, it would make it a lot easier for me to answer the questions more easily.
Let me just ask you this, and I'll give you the report before you answer the question if you need it, all right?
Okay.
First of all, didn't you say in your report on this particular test,
Mr. Neufeld, don't you think you need a foundational question? What is, does she recognize what it is?
do you recognize the 3-page document that I just showed you?
Yes, I do.
And is it your final report to the California Association of Crime Laboratory Directors with respect to your results on the 1988 proficiency test that they gave you?
Yes, it is.
And in that report, Dr. Cotton, didn't you state that the patterns obtained from stains numbered 70 and 72 were the same?
Yes.
And didn't you state in that same report that you did obtain a pattern for sample 76 that was suitable for comparison purposes, but was not found to match the other samples tested?
Yes, we did say that.
And would you agree, Dr. Cotton, that since 76 is supposed to come from the same person as 70 and 72, the fact that you got a pattern, but you failed to match it with 70 and 72 would be a would be a false exclusion?
I wouldn't phrase it that way, first of all, because I would need to determine whether that was this mixture that I was remembering. And secondly, you have to go back to the films to look at the 2 patterns that you're talking about and see if there's enough data in each of those. That is, if you can't, not making a match is sort of like saying it's inconclusive. We didn't actually even make a list in this report of things which were specifically excluded. So it may mean, based on the data, that we were unable to come to a conclusion, not that we literally said something was excluded and then it was not.
Well, Dr. Cotton, isn't it a fact that item 76 was not a mixture?
Yeah, let me come back to this. No, item 76 was not a mixture, but item 72 was a mixture.
And what about item 70?
And item 70 was not a mixture.
Right. So item 76, according to the way this test was set up, should have matched item 70. Is that correct?
Yes.
And even though you got a pattern for item 76, which was not a mixture, you did not state that it matched item 70. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
And so the failure to declare that match would be a mistake, wouldn't it? By the definition of the test.
It would if the 2 patterns were both of equal quality and we just missed it. Remember that remember, I guess you don't really know this, but each of these samples, these 49 samples, was extracted as if it were a sexual assault sample because we had no information. And in that type of extraction, which is not something that was done in this particular case, you try to separate DNA from a sperm fraction from any DNA that's in something else. So of the 49 samples, you end up with really 2 samples from each of the 49, giving you a total of 98. And so you have 98 patterns which were manually, visibly compared to one another. And if the patterns are both good, and I can't recall if they are, the fact that we missed seeing it in all this comparison of 98 patterns with, every other pattern of the 98 is an error in finding that match, but in my mind I do not think of it as a false exclusion, a wrongful exclusion.
I appreciate that you don't consider it a wrongful exclusion, but, and you said that one of your concerns was that you don't know how clear the pattern was. Is that correct?
That's right.
Well, the fact that your report states that the pattern for 76 was suitable for comparison purposes, would that refresh your recollection as to whether the pattern for 76 was in fact suitable for comparison purposes? Would it?
I understand that it says that, but that doesn't give me any information. The mixture pattern was a problem, and it doesn't provide any information about the pattern for 70. So,
excuse me, Dr.
I'm
Cott.
sorry, could the witness finish
I
her
thought she was
answer, please?
finished.
Well, so is a pause, clearly. Proceed.
well, what I'm saying is that I don't have enough information in front of me to give you a clear answer as to whether or not that was not mentioned because it was basically an inconclusive, or whether or not we simply missed seeing the match and we could have made a match and did not.
Dr. Cotton, is there any qualification in this report when you're describing the pattern comparisons of sample 70, which is not a mixture, with sample 72?
No, there isn't.
And of course, in your laboratory, you wouldn't have called a match if that pattern on item number 70 wasn't sufficiently clear and robust to compare with 72. Isn't that right?
That would be correct in general, but I remember I've looked at these films on several different occasions. They are not as good as the films that we produce now, and so there are things about those films that might lead to problems in interpretation.
And Dr. Cotton, you wouldn't have said in your report, quote, referring to item number 76, these patterns were suitable for comparison purposes, but were not found in the other samples tested, unquote, unless that was true, would you?
No.
Okay. One moment. Next in order.
1156.
This is the order read for this particular. One moment. Cotton, I show you this photograph. And I ask you, is that photograph reflecting a comparison of samples 70, 72, and 76 that we were just discussing?
Yes, it seems to be, except these weren't all on the same film, so this appears to be various 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 patterns from different films lined up to be able to photograph them.
But the actual lanes themselves represent the samples that were tested by your laboratory in this proficiency test, correct?
Yes, can I ask a question about the picture? Do you know whether or not the labeling across Oh, the labeling across the top must have been put on in order to make the picture. So
The labeling across the top, very much the same way the labeling was put on the order ads in this particular
Okay.
case, so you could identify which lanes are attributable to which samples. Same thing was done in this photograph. Does that help?
Okay. Yes, it does.
Okay.
I guess we're lucky. We are luckier than the jury because DNA is not new to us. It's not so unknown. Unknown is feared. Unknown isn't trusted. So there's really good possibility that everybody sitting on that jury just doesn't. They don't know enough to trust it yet. So they're only going to trust what they know. So yeah, yeah, that's it. That sucks. Doesn't that suck? Doesn't that suck that this whole DNA thing just happened? Why couldn't they just ask simple questions? I guess that's what the Dream Team was paid for. They were paid to do exactly what they did here. They're not dumbasses, guys. They're not dumbasses. We fell right into their trap too. We were calling them dumbasses when they're just, jeez. I think so. I think so. Yeah, because there's 498. So we're halfway through. But they weren't paid, were they? Dumbasses.
Of course, Commissioner, I'd like to put it up on the envelope. Your Honor, what is the easiest way for me to point the different lanes for the witness?
Probably the PowerPoint.
Who's that guy? Do we know him? Do we know who that? Oh, can you see my mouse? I think you can. He's gone now. Him, right here. Who's that dude?
Would you like to step down? I think it'd be easier for you to see this.
Is he a new guy?
Now, in this particular proficiency
Can't
test
see my mouse. Never mind.
series of order ads, it's basically divided up into 3 different samples. As you can see at the top of the photograph there, there's sample 70, sample 72, and finally sample 76. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And the lane that represents the non-semen fraction of sample 76 is the second lane from the right, where the pink arrow is pointing at. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And now what I'd like you to do is not look at the mixture, but I'd like you to compare. Can we put a pink dot just so we'll have a permanent point of reference there, so the witness can go back and forth? All right. Now, what I'd like you to do is compare the pattern that you see in that lane, the second lane from the right, to go all the way across to sample 70, to the third.
I'm going to stop there before I say something inappropriate about the pink dot and the pink arrow pointing to whatever it's pointing to. Guys, thank you so much for coming out today. We had I don't think did we have a technical issue this one? I don't know, but it was better anyway. We didn't have chat up. That's probably why. All right. I will see you all again very soon. I hope you guys really have a great day. And behave, okay? Bye, guys.